Welcome everybody, I am 6am Comics, and what I tell you last week, Super Nolan reboot, let's go! As we typically do, let's begin with the overall presentation. Probably the most obvious thing to point out is that unlike the original Super Nolan tales, this is not a hardcover 100-page graphic novel. This is a standard 7-page triple stapled floppy. Also in a departure from previous Super Nolan books, this new series is presented in color. Our cover features the title character standing stoically as he examines his biceps. Also, check out that six-pack. Impressive. In the upper left, next to this oddly stapled corner, we see an updated version of the Worldwide Comics logo. I dig the minimalist take. While the book's title is the only black and white portion of the design, it's still given a little bit of flair with a tiny Super Nolan flying around the end. And what's this? Copies percent 100 off. Sign me up for the... Wait a minute. Whose printer is he using to make these copies? Hang. Hey, no, why is my printer out of ink? You mean how many copies? Moving on from the cover, let's have a look at those sweet interiors. As I mentioned, this book is fully colored and features some of Nolan's cleanest panel presentation to date. And yet it still maintains consistency with the previous comics by keeping the overall simplicity of the illustrations intact. While some may imply that the bleed-through of the marker prevented Nolan from using both sides of the paper, this was actually a very calculated and innovative approach. If you have terribly short-term memory, like myself, it can be difficult to flip to a new page and try to remember the context of the previous page while you read it. Well, kiss that problem goodbye because you've always got a clear visual of the previous page to the left of the page that you're reading. Also, if you suffer from dyslexia, you'll have no issues reading the text backwards. This is essentially the greatest accessibility fix to comic books in existence. Short-term memory loss, dyslexia, short-term memory loss. Consider yourselves accommodated. Let's get into the story. While the comic does present itself as a reboot, it basically just recaps the origin of Super Nolan with slightly more detail. Not necessarily undoing anything from the previous books, but providing more context and allowing itself the freedom to fit snugly between the chapters of Super Nolan 1. Like the original book, we begin with a boy named Nolan. Sorry, a man named Nolan, sitting comfortably on his bed, reading a book. A meteor approaches, blazing through the atmosphere, directly above the man's house. It crashes through the ceiling of the kitchen, startling Nolan as he runs to the hole in his wall to investigate the damage. What the heck? As he examines the meteor, it breaks open, and a strange purple goo bursts out of the rock and attaches itself to Nolan. He struggles to escape its sticky embrace, but the more he fights, the more it consumes him. His eyes dilate. With his former self vanishing into thin air, all that remains is his new, transformed body. Oog. I feel like somebody used my head for a trampoline. He rises. But the rest of my body feels like $1,000,000,000. And boy does it look it too. Look at those muscles. He takes off, super powered by the space rock. His flight creates several supersonic booms as he launches himself into the air, zipping and zooming around skyscrapers with ease. However, as he tests out his new abilities, something bashes him on the head and sends him falling back to Earth. Two tentacles with buzzsaws attached attempt to slice our hero in half, but he quickly dodges their attacks with his super reflexes. Who could be doing this? Well, as expected, it's a villain we're all familiar with at this point, the evil genius, Frank F. Frank. And he looks more twisted than he has ever looked before. Foolish superhero. You cannot beat Frank. Okay, maybe I'm bluffing. Me and my robo-suit shall defeat you. Fight! As Frank prepares to eliminate our beloved Super Nolan, his robo-suit begins to transform into a more armored, battle-ready appearance.
Battlesuit activated.
Nolan, still discovering his newfound abilities, asked aloud, I wonder if I have laser eyes? A devastating burst of energy shoots out of his eyeballs, burning his mask right off, and lasering Frank's battlesuit in half, nearly removing his legs. He mutters, "Ow," as our first issue comes to an end. When Nolan first announced a reboot of this popular character, many fans were initially worried. Super Nolan 1 and 2 have become iconic graphic novels, and there was a general fear that these could potentially undo the legacy of Worldwide Comics' most popular titles. Spectacular Black Widow rebooted a comical, more silly series and turned it into a gritty, realistic, character-focused superhero drama. While this proved a successful approach to Black Widow, many feared that the same treatment would be given to Super Nolan, and voiced concern that this would be a disservice to what the character represents. Super Nolan has always been comical, and sometimes even quite violent, but at its heart, there is a childlike innocence and an overall theme of forgiveness and redemption. One of the most iconic moments in the original run was at the climax of the final battle, where Super Nolan saves Frank F. Frank, who had been trying to kill Super Nolan for the last 90+ pages, and forgives him with a brotherly embrace. The following issue would see Frank taking on the role of a sidekick, assisting Super Nolan from their home base. So was this a faithful retelling of the Super Nolan origin, or a gritty reimagining? I'd say this was a perfect balance of old school Super Nolan with a healthy mix of maturity and growth from a growing creator. The tone and overall story were a near perfect tribute to the Super Nolan stories of old, and yet brought something new and refreshing to the table. Our title hero, while maintaining the personality and overall demeanor of the character, has clearly aged up from the young boy of the originals. He is now referred to as a grown man and sports a much more toned and mature physique. In addition, in what is considered the largest deviation from the previous run, Frank F. Frank has aged tremendously, now looking more like a decrepit old man than the youthful genius up-and-comer he used to be. So now that we have a new take on a beloved hero, where do these new tales fit in with the Worldwide Comics universe? While not explicitly stated, I believe this takes place in the spectacular Black Widow timeline. Although the lighter tone is consistent with other Worldwide Comics stories, it still takes on a more grounded approach and avoids any campiness one would come to expect from something outside the spectacular universe. While we've yet to review them, Spectacular Black Widow issues 3 and 4 feature an older and clearly not reformed version of Frank F. Frank, donning his Killer Bee persona, an alter ego he used in the original Super Nolan 1, but with some visual differences. Now allow me to put my tinfoil hat on, because I have a disturbing theory about how this version of Super Nolan fits in with that universe, and you may not like it. The version of Frank in Spectacular Black Widow issue 4 is older, but definitely not as old as the version we see in this issue of Super Nolan. He's also not as technologically advanced, which leads me to believe that the new Super Nolan issues take place in that timeline's future. Now for the part you may not like. Super Nolan's appearance, although mostly the same as the original design, has a few differences. The obvious change is the switch from black gloves, boots, cape, and undies to red gloves, boots, cape, and undies. But there's one very minor feature that you may have missed. The lines on his mask. Look familiar? That's right. Spectacular Black Widow number 2's main antagonist, Stopwatch. Similar mask, similar colors, both have the ability to fly, both are potentially from the future, and what exactly did Stopwatch make his glorious arrival in? A meteor? Well, where have we seen a superpowered being associated with a meteor before? I believe that something happens to Super Nolan down the road which turns him evil, and makes him travel back in time to battle a young Black Widow as the new supervillain Stopwatch. Maybe the goof from the meteor has corrupted his mind over time. Come to think of it, where have we seen a corrupting evil alien material before? The original Black Widow run, issue number 1. The Molder reaches into another timeline and pulls alien material which takes over his body and gives him the ability to shapeshift, also turning him into a supervillain. Maybe it's all connected. Or maybe the author is just a kid having fun. And there you go. The Super Nolan reboot, issue number 1. There is an issue number 2. I believe he is working on an issue number 3. We're gonna need a whole new labeling system for these comics now, because now we got Super Nolan 1, Super Nolan 2, Super Nolan 2.5, and then Super Nolan 1 and Super Nolan 2. Anyway, as for my rating, percent 100 off, I say percent 100 on. Okay.